Welcome. Thanks for joining our Research Info series, A Blind Date with Knowledge. I'm your host, Laura Brady. Today, I'm joined by Dr Sarah Essex, a Principal Investigator and the Cancer Trials Team Lead here at South Keys. Hi, Dr Essex.
Hello.
Thanks for having a conversation with me. Can you just let everybody know about your academic background in research and the sorts of things that you've worked on in the past?
Yeah, so I did a biological sciences degree, a BSc with an intercalated year. So I worked at Amersham Health International for a year as part of my degree. And it was there that I got exposed to a lot of research. We did imaging compounds to go in PET and CT scanners. So it was there that I realised that if I wanted to go into research, I really needed to do a PhD.
Yeah.
So to get the kind of jobs that I wanted to do.
So was that an immediate trigger for you? You knew straight away?
Yeah, I knew. I thought that's one good thing, and I would say to everyone, if there is an opportunity on your degree course to do like a year in industry or a year whatever kind of degree you do, I think it just gives you that exposure to the real life. What jobs you can do. So I worked in a lab, got trained in all kinds of techniques and exposure to loads of different research, and that was where I thought that this is what I want to do as a job. Yeah. So I came back to university and started applying for PhDs. So I was at Warwick Uni for my undergraduate, and then I got a 4-year master's PhD, like a combined. So that was at Birmingham University. So I did 2 6-month projects in the master's, which was really good, just on general immune kind of structures and different cell types, but that was more about just learning loads of techniques,
like the research techniques.
Yeah, loads of lab techniques, like cell culture, or like some animal studies, all different, like tissue sectioning, staining, immunohistochemistry, all kinds of things like that. And it meant that I could go into my PhD for 3 years having learn all those techniques to kind of hit the ground running.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really vast what it encompasses. Yeah. So you need it
was brilliant. And then I went straight into my PhD, 3 full years on it, having those techniques behind me. So my PhD was looking at regional identity in fibroblasts, but within rheumatoid arthritis.
Okay.
So this was in looking at human tissue samples. So we'd get the knee from knee replacements, and we'd have a look at the fibroblast was thought to be quite a structurally inert cell.
Okay.
But there was literature coming out that it was actually more involved in the process of inflammation and autoimmunity than we first or initially thought. So it was a research around that cell and how it interacted with the other cells around it and different things. So
it's really interesting. I think it's often the case with research, then once a light's been shone on a specific area and then you start to see the literature coming out, like there's people drawn towards the flame of that discovery. Do you find that the sort of research questions that differed a lot since being in like an academic environment and then coming into a clinical environment?
Yeah, I think so. I think with the academic, you've got the opportunity to focus on really niche, small areas, and you do become quite, you're in a big group and you do your little part of something, and it often, you can work like with your PhD projects for years, and
it can be like one receptor or one cell, like
that's it, and it's very small, and you do get so focused that sometimes you don't quite step back and look at the bigger picture. Whereas I think since coming into the NHS, particularly the research that we do, it does look at the bigger picture. You're looking at, and you're at the different end of it. I was at the very start of looking at a receptor. Did that affect it? And then you'd look at drugs that maybe could interact with that receptor, whereas we're at the other end where that work's been done,
and
we've got the drugs
outcome,
and you're actually putting them into patients. So it's good. It's very good in a different way, I think, because you're seeing you're 20 years further down the line in the research and looking at putting it in patients. So I've liked both aspects really. I think it's good. I like the interaction now, having moved from academia into the NHS to interact with patients, and that side of it was something that I've really enjoyed.
I guess it's hard when you're in a lab all day, like you said, looking at the same thing over again, to kind of visualise how it does translate into an outcome for somebody, and like how it can like change the lives of people. So the participant experience. So can we talk a little bit about how that's impacted? So it'll be things like the recruitment process, how the patient information sheet is designed, like all these things that we're talking about now. How does that translate for a patient in terms of their understanding of the trial that they're involved in?
Mm-hmm. I think that's really key, and it's something that, so I first went from academia into working at Birmingham Clinical Trials Unit as a sponsor. Yeah. So I was writing the protocols and the patient information.
I've seen all angles from it.
But I think it would have been, I'd be better at it now.
Yeah.
Having been at the patient end.
It's always the case, because you figure things out at different stages and learn like what would be required, what's a good stance to have as a sponsor. Now you appreciate what those things are.
Exactly, and I think it's something the patient information sheet really needs to hit that balance of giving the patient the information they need to make an informed decision, but then not overwhelming them, and it's particularly not with the jargon, which I think is really good nowadays, that we have all these, the patient and the lay people on the committees, because they can really look at it from a non-scientific, non-medical point of view and think, well, actually, no, why do you have to use that terminology?
Yeah. You know, is that standard now that there's somebody there to consult for those things? It's not, doesn't change from sponsor to sponsor?
It's generally, it's a standard. It's on. So when patient information sheets get reviewed now by ethical committees, on that ethical committee, there are a variety of people, and there's always lay people on there that don't necessarily have a scientific background or a medical background, and they're there to read it as your, Joe Bloggs off the street kind of thing, so that they can look at it objectively and say, can you not say it in a more simplistic way or a more straightforward way, to make sure that it can be read by anybody and understood by anybody.
Yeah. And we have also obviously the research delivery staff as well, who, although the trials will always change, they're used to kind of spotting the signs that maybe somebody needs a little bit more explanation, or helping them to go through all the processes of reading the information sheet, understanding it, which can be sometimes two different things. And then the rest of the recruitment process. So secondly, how much of that process is dictated by the overall trial protocol, and how much of it is the responsibility of the research staff, would you say? Is it already sort of outlined by how a trial is being conducted overall, generally? Or is it, from site to site, do you have sort of teams in place to help with that process?
I think we have a little bit of leeway from site to site, but we do get dictated a lot from the sponsor. So obviously they develop all the materials and they all go through ethics, so they're what we can use. Yeah. But I think how we deliver it at site works on a local level.
So it's how important.
Yeah, exactly, because not every trust is the same, not every department's the same, and I think it's important that you know your team, your nursing team, your clinician team, and you know your patients, and whether they're on a ward. Some trials they may be quite sick, some trials it might be an urgency where we need to know whether they want to go in a trial within 24 hours. Other trials we've got time to get back to them, to give them chance to think about it. So I think it very much depends on your situation, but it's something that we will work with. We'll look at the materials we've got and we'll think about how we're going to approach patients, and also it's patient to patient, because like you've said, their understanding, their background, where they've come from, how much they actually want to know. Some people don't want to know a lot, but we need to understand what they're signing up for when it's a clinical trial.
Because I guess you often find people trusting the doctors and wanting to be part of something, but it's really important they understand exactly what it is that they're being part of, and not just kind of listening to, so to speak, the people in scrubs or the guy in the white coat.
Exactly. And I think it's important that we don't try and influence that decision. And we do say to them that they are choosing a different pathway than the standard of clinical care, and we need to make sure that they understand, because often in trials there are extra things that the patient, extra scans, extra visits, it's newer treatments that we don't know a lot about. Sometimes I think we need to make sure that they understand exactly what they're signing up to be part of.
So in the at the moment, in the portfolio of cancer trials, what's the sort of distribution between the phases of trials that the phases are in?
So we generally, most of ours are phase 3, and we do have phase 2 as well.
Can we just go through kind of what the general phases are for people who don't know?
So the phase 1 studies, which would be your when they're first trialled in people. So they're coming from either being used in cell lines, or they might have been tested in animals and things in a lab. And this is like the first time they're being used, and it generally you're looking then at side effects. So you obviously start off, it's in a really small number of people. You're starting off at a really low dose, and they're looking at how the drug's excreted, how long it might hang around, so that they do a lot of blood tests at that time, maybe some urine tests to see how it's excreted from the body. But it's really carefully done, and like one person at a time.
That would be phase 1.
That would be phase 1, which we don't do here at South Tees, because it's very intense. You need almost a clinical trials unit where people can come and be admitted to and have one-to-one care.
Constant observation.
So our closest centres would be Newcastle, Leeds, Manchester, some of the big city hospitals. But what we do is keep an eye on what phase 1 trials they have open there, so that if we do have any patients it would be relevant for them, we can then offer for them to be referred. So we do liaise closely with them and make sure, and we have in the past referred patients either across to other centres or across to up to Newcastle for these studies, so that they do have, it's not that they don't have access, it's just that they would have to travel if they're willing for treatment to those. But phase 2 we do here, so that's when you're looking at putting the new drug medication into a larger number of patients, and then you're looking at, so you've determined maybe the dosage then, and it's looking at the wider side effects. It's looking at how often you perhaps give that drug. Then it's comparing it. Is it working against the disease? So is it having some efficacy against that disease? Is it doing?
Outcome,
exactly. So we do a few of those, but they're still quite labour intensive. They're very much you do a lot of blood tests, a lot, just to make sure, because it is still a very novel into patients. We're making sure that we're looking after them. So the majority of the work we do here is phase 3. So once phase 1 and 2, obviously these go through panels. These go through a lot of clinicians where they meet and discuss the data that's come out of those trials, make sure everything's okay, and then they can progress to the next stage. Phase 3 is the bulk of our work, and this is generally randomised trials that we do, and this is where you're taking that new drug or new regimen and randomising it against the gold standard of clinical care at that time, and that's to see if it is improved. So is it improved quality of life? Is it improved efficacy against the tumour or whatever, or the blood cancer that we're looking at? So that's where a lot of our work comes.
Because it can be, obviously a drug can have an effect, but if it's not having an effect that's greater than the current standard of care, then it's there's different avenues that need to be explored. So what sort of parameters do you use to assess the efficacy? Like you said, it's not just if it's having the effect on the target, it's also their quality of life and other things surrounding that. So
with a lot of our, obviously we collect all the information, as much information as we can, a lot on adverse events, so anything basically that happens to the patient, so anything they talk about, headaches, any kind of diarrhea, sickness, anything like that, we record everything and we grade it, and that gets all collected.
So and anything that happens in that time,
everything at all recorded. We don't anything, and then what we do is they assess the relatedness to the drug, and obviously we're just one of many sites, so we're collecting it here. We might have 10 patients in a trial here, so will another site, and that information gets collated by the sponsor, and they can put that together, and that's what produces the side effect profiles that you get in the little packets of your medication and things. We also look at quality of life, because that's really important, and I think with a lot of our trials, we might compare a number of arms, so it might be 1, 2, 3 or 4 different randomizations, and the important thing for us is not only does it work against their cancer for us or for our trials, but does it have an impact on the quality of life? Because it's no good if we're curing the cancer but leaving them with a very poor quality of life, or making them really unwell while they're being treated. And I think, or if 2 drugs are quite comparable, we then look to other things like quality of life. So we assess how that we do a baseline quality of life, and then we do it routinely throughout treatment and also afterwards. And we're looking at things like, are they able to get out and about as normal? Are they able to look after themselves? What kind of side effects are they having? And this is related to, is it all the time? Is it sometimes? Is it rarely? So, it's something that they can fill in. They're quite big booklets, so it is time consuming for the patient, but they can take them home.
Exactly. What do you think about the sort of advancements with technology we've had recently, you know, just the use of an iPad or a smart meter or smart watches to kind of record the vital signs and things like this? Do you think that's something that would help in this vein?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's really good, but I guess it depends on the population. Some of the studies we've got, you know, are people that might not have access to computers or, you know, or don't feel confident. You know, we would actually give them, so we've got like smartphones that are only programmed just for these, purely for these quality of lives. But if people aren't quite au fait with using them, you know, but then we always have the caveat that we can use the paper form if they prefer. But I think more often than not going forwards, they will be on these iPads or smartphones, and we can give them out, they can take them home, but it means it can give them reminders when they need to be done. We don't have to worry about them remembering to bring quality of life back in or post them off to us. It gets sent straight to the sponsor. So I think it's more efficient way, and it also it's more accurate because nobody's transcribing anything. It just goes straight onto the database, which I think is really good.
Well, that's one of the reasons I bring it up, because when you're talking about sort of inclusivity with participation and recruitment, the digitisation of things can really help with that. So like you said, if there's no sort of translation of it, and especially you could then put it in a different language very easily. But like you said, there are going to be difficulties with that. Like not everybody has access or kind of understands how to use those things. But, you know, I foresee kind of, you have these sort of live web chats on a lot of websites now. So if like the overall like trial conductor was maybe going to like provide these for patients, then that would be something that would be necessary, having like a system where they can constantly be you know, go online, chat, how do I use this,
and ask for help. And I think it's just important that we make sure that we're inclusive for everybody. So if someone isn't happy using that kind of technology, that we do go back and use the paper forms, and we support them in that by providing them, you know, we can print off 10 of them, and then we can ring them and say, right, today please fill in that one and bring it back, or, you know, so there are different ways that we can do it, I think.
So if we're have a little comment on collaboration. So there's a lot of I've seen a few trials where, you know, it's drugs that have, well, COVID for example, where there's drugs that are being tested in a certain vein, and then to be applied to different form of treatment. So there's some there's a cancer drug that's in a cardio trial at the moment to decrease. Is there any sort of crossover trials, collaborations that you've got going on in the cancer portfolio?
Yeah, so we have a lot of different, so we cross over with the infectious disease team, because obviously we've got some viruses that are known to cause cancers, so we work with them a bit on some of those studies, be it that it's an antiviral drug that we're looking like more of a preventative measure. We cross over, like you say, with the cardio team. We're looking at a lot of our anthracycline use within breast, and some of the blood cancers can cause cardiac problems, you know, as part of the treatment. So we're looking at that drug to make sure, or to see if we can protect the heart during that, and that will stop. It's only a small proportion of patients, but it's a serious side effect for those patients. You know, we're curing their cancer, but we leave them with, you know, heart problems, which are, you know, very serious and affect their quality of life. So, and that's obviously a homegrown study from Dr Austin. So that's you know, really good to have that. Him being that chief investigator and us being a key site for that, and it's really good to be able to collaborate.
It sounds like it's obviously collaboration is important, but that's a perfect example of, you know, where it can really help to improve the quality of life. You don't, like you said, don't want to be leaving somebody with another problem, just cure one and give them another.
And I think that's the thing with cancer at the moment, is we're getting better and better at treating, and you know, people are in long remissions, and I think it's important now, and that's what a lot of our trials are, when you look at the new ones we're opening, are looking at dose reduction, or you know, reducing the fractions of radiotherapy.
I've noticed something like that. So is it, like, how are they going for you? There's a few like that.
I think COVID accelerated that, because we did reduce some fraction, like radiotherapy fractions, or the number, because we didn't want to bring people in as much. But it is important that we don't over-treat patients, because that's, you know, we don't want to under-treat them. But if we're over-treating them, we're causing these side effects, you know, and it is affecting their quality of life. So a lot of the studies at the moment are looking at that. And we also collaborate a lot with the surgical team as well. So obviously with cancer we get a lot of surgical resections, so there's a lot of crossover with that. So one of our biggest recruiters at the moment is called Mastery, and that's looking at robotic surgery. So I think, you know, there's so many different, you know, oncology covers,
there's endless,
it covers all sorts. It covers drugs, it covers surgery, you know, we've got a bit of infectious diseases as well, so it's a big collaboration.
So in terms of the drugs, of the investigational products, what sort of categories of those do you see? Do they take a specific amount of handling, like the storage of them? How are they? What sort of things do you need in place to make sure that they're handled properly? I
think with the obviously it's important, and we do have a clinical trials pharmacy team, because our drugs that come in, so obviously a lot of them are provided free of charge as part of the studies, which is another, it's just a side bonus, I guess, that they're provided for free, but they need to be stored under certain conditions and monitored within that time, so they can't have temperature exclusions and things, and if they do, they have to be quarantined.
So the temperature exclusion would be if the in transit the temperature surrounding the drug had
or while they're in storage here, if the fridge goes off, the freezer, anything like that, or you know, if it's room temp and it's hot in the summer and it goes above a certain, we have to get permission to still use that drug. So it's important, and that's what the clinical trials pharmacy team do a lot. It's in their SOP to make sure that the storage is there, and we have to provide the temperature readings for the whole period of the trial while that drug is stored. We have a lot of cancer trials that obviously involve IV chemo that needs to be made up, so that's our aseptics team. So they have to be involved from the outset. It's
quite a long process, the aseptic the requirements. So I went to visit the pharmacy department recently with Sarah, and they do a lot of work there, really. It's constantly going on.
And that's something all our trials have to go through it's called the HOP meeting. So it's the Haematology Oncology Pharmacy meeting, and they have to be approved, because that's the change from the standard of care, and it can involve more laborious maybe setup in terms of providing of the drug. The making up of the drugs might take longer than standard of care, or it might be a longer, say, infusion process.
Is that because it's an external specification from the overall protocol?
That's it. It might be different. It might be just different drugs, or it might be same drug but like a different way of making it up, or a very specific way, so they have to follow the specific set of instructions. So they've got to factor that in with their time. So if we're going to get 10 patients on that trial and each patient is going to take an hour longer to make up, you know, they need to think, have they got the staff to do it? Can we? And that's why we always go through that meeting before we get the final yes to take part in a study.
So is that sort of part of your feasibility assessment for here?
Absolutely. And then they also go with, so the day units that would deliver the chemotherapy, we have to think about chair time. So they have a number of slots in the day for delivering IV chemo, and if, you know, we've had one of ours that took it was like a whole day infusion rather than, say, the standard of care, which would be in a couple of hours. So that means you've got a patient sat in that chair for the whole day, whereas before you could have had maybe 4 patients coming in throughout the day, and that's important for them to consider. So I think that's one thing I've learned since sort of being involved in the setup of trials in the NHS, is that you've got to involve everybody from the outset. So within cancer, you know, we involve the labs like yourselves, we involve radiotherapy, radiology, because we've often got a lot of extra scans and the reporting is often more complex. And we have to involve the chemo day unit, the wards. So it's everybody to make sure that, and they need to have a look at the protocol and make sure there's nothing in there from their view that would affect, you know, the way the trial could be ran, or would, you know, affect the patients at the site as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to kind of just demonstrate how like diverse the roles in research are. I mean, obviously there are research personnel in all of these areas, but it's not necessarily totally dedicated research people that are carrying out these things.
No, that's it, and everyone has a different perspective. You know, I'm not a trained nurse, I'm a scientist, so I might not, you know, and I don't work on the ward, and I don't work in the day unit, and they might see things like one of our new ones that we're setting up now is blinded IV. So we don't, I'm not allowed to know, nor the people that are assessing the adverse events, whether they've had the placebo or the treatment. But the treatment is orange and the placebo is white, colourless. So, you know, it's obvious. So we have to then make sure that we're hiding not only the IV bag but the line going into the patient, so that nobody knows.
Well, that must be interesting.
It's a challenge, and that's something, you know, that I not having ever given anybody, put an IV in, that we need to think about how, just sheer logistics of how we do things and how we move things around. So that's why it's important to have keen people, or to just let them know what we're doing in all areas.
That enthusiasm to find the solutions and to be working towards the same goal.
And you realise that it is, these people are so busy. The nurses that are giving, the chemo competent nurses are few and far between, and they are so busy on the wards and on their day unit. And if we go and ask them, by the way, this has to be blinded, you're not allowed to see that, and it just gives them, it's an extra thing for them to think about. So we try and be as supportive as we can and do as much as we can, so that it's not impacting on the care and that's sort of their normal daily routines.
Does a sponsor ever help with things like that? Is that something that would be specified? Or
we go back to them, when we have the site initiation visits, they might share. It's like sharing learning. If they've got sites that are already open, we might bring up, we're like, how is that site doing that?
Exactly.
How are they managing it? And so they might feed for, like, they've decided to do this, or they've found from a manufacturer that they might have a cover, and they'll say, we'll provide it, with that. So I think it's about just communicating with them and asking the questions. And similarly, if we find something that we find works for us, that's when you have a lot of like these investigator meetings, obviously now mostly on Teams, where you go on, they might just have an hour where everyone has a chat and says, we've recruited 10 patients, we haven't recruited any, like, how are you finding these patients, what are your barriers to recruitment, which we discuss a lot.
And it's really valuable, that network then to have between all the sites.
Absolutely. And I think just sharing of best practice generally, locally and nationally, is really good, and having those meetings means that we can learn from everybody else who's perhaps already, they might be a bit ahead of you and have already come across these problems, or we might be the ones saying, we've already tried this worked for us, and then, or even we make sheets up that we might, checklists that we might do, nursing checklists we call them, for when we see a patient, and we can share those and things. So I think you don't want people to have to reinvent the wheel. If you've already done some of the work, you might as well sort of share it with everybody.
I think it comes back to the collaboration all the time, collaboration, communication. So I could probably sit here all day and speak to you about things, but do you have any advice for those who are curious about research, just as an end note?
I think if you're sort of just coming into the start of your career, I didn't know how many jobs there were out there in research. I went to uni and did biological sciences just because I loved it. So I think firstly, just do what you love, and that will lead you in, like, I've gone on a very strange roundabout way into trials.
But like you said at the start, that's part of the reason that makes you able to do the job that you do well, because you see from different angles. You've had the opinion from a sponsor, the academic side, and then how it translates like that.
That's it, and it works well in our team. So we've got people who've come from all different kind of backgrounds. They've either worked their way up through the NHS, that they've come in after they've done some kind of scientific degree, or people have been nurses on wards in the community and have come in, and those different viewpoints help. I would say if you're already in the NHS working in a different area, would be just coming. We're always happy to have people come shadow us, just learn about research and learn about what jobs. We've got people who do the setup of trials, the delivery of trials. We've got people who write protocols, who are in the chief investigator led side. We've got people writing grants and scientific papers. So there's just so many different avenues, and I think just try it all out. We're happy for people to come and spend some time with us and sort of figure out what's there.
Oh, good. Well, endless opportunity. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for listening. If you would like to engage with us about any of the content, please feel free to use the contacts listed here.